Hi, we're still taking a break from Song of Solomon. We're going to come back to it for sure. But for right now, I'm looking at asking God questions. And I want to look at another place where God and one of the people of God have a long conversation. And that's in the book of Habakkuk. So I'm not going to show you the whole book, but here's basically what happens. There's a dialogue in Habakkuk. It starts in chapter 1. This is what Habakkuk says. He says, "How long, O Lord, will I call for help, and you will not hear? I cry out to you violence, yet you do not save. Why do you make me see iniquity and cause me to look on wickedness? Yes, destruction and violence are before me. Strife exists and contention arises. Therefore the law is ignored and justice is never upheld. For the wicked surround the righteous. Therefore justice comes out perverted." So Habakkuk asks a question. He says, God, there's so much evil in our day. Why do you not act? Why do you not hear when I call for help? Why do you not save? Why do you make me see all this horribleness and wickedness and injustice and not respond? And God answers. God says, look among the nations, observe, be astonished, wonder, because I'm doing something in your days you wouldn't believe it if you were told. For behold, I'm raising up the Chaldeans, that fierce and impetuous people who march throughout the earth to seize dwelling places which are not theirs. God says, I am going to answer you. And it's about to happen in your days. You wouldn't believe it. It's going to be astonishing in its impact. I'm going to bring the Chaldeans in and I'm going to judge everybody with the Chaldeans. And Habakkuk says, wait a minute. That doesn't sound right. He says, are you not from everlasting, O Lord, my God, my Holy One? We will not die. He says, I know that we're protected by you. You, O Lord, have appointed them to judge, and you, O Rock, have established them to correct. He says, I understand what you're saying. You're saying you're going to bring the Chaldeans to judge us. But, he says, your eyes are too pure to approve evil, and you cannot look on wickedness with favor. Why do you look with favor on those who deal treacherously? Why are you silent when the wicked swallow up those more righteous than they? Now, what he's saying here is, God, the Chaldeans, they are far worse than us. I see unrighteousness around me. You're going to bring in even more unrighteous people, and they're going to triumph, and they will be unjust. Then that's even worse. Why would you use somebody so wicked to judge our wickedness? So then he says, look, I'm going to stand on my guard post and station myself on the rampart, and I'll keep watch to say what will speak to me and how I may reply when I'm reproved. So he says, I'm going to wait and see what you say back to me, God. And I know you may reprove me, but I'm listening to hear and what I need to reply. Do I need to repent? Do I need to ask another question? But he basically says, I'm in it to hear what you have to say. Talk to me. And God responds and says, record the vision and inscribe it on tablets that the one who reads it may run. For the vision is yet for the appointed time. It hastens toward the goal and will not fail. Though it tarries, wait for it, for it will certainly come and will not delay. Behold, as for the proud one, his soul is not right within him, but the righteous will live by his faith. So the first thing he says is, I have another prophecy for you. I'm going to do something after the Chaldeans come in and judge, but it's going to be a while. And you need to just trust. You need to live by faith. You need to wait for it. Though it tarries, keep waiting. It won't delay. That is, it may take a while, but no longer than it's supposed to. And it will definitely happen. Inscribe it on tablets. Write it down because you may be dead before you see it. I think that's what he's saying. But regardless, write it down so that people will know I've said it. And then he says, furthermore, here's what he's saying. Wine betrays the haughty man so that he does not stay at home. He enlarges his appetite like Sheol. He's like death, never satisfied. He also gathers to himself all nations and collects to himself all peoples. This is about the Chaldeans. He says the Chaldeans are going to come in and judge you because they will think they can do anything they want. They're not going to stay at home. They're going to keep getting more and more greedy, like the grave, like Sheol. He's never going to be satisfied. When enough people die, death doesn't get full and stop happening. He says the Chaldeans are gathering to themselves all the other nations. They're going to voraciously and ravenously go out destroying everybody. But then he says, will not all of these that he's oppressed, including your nation, take up a taunt song against him, even mockery and insinuations against him? Won't they one day mock and say, woe to him who increases what is not his? For how long? And makes himself rich with loans. Will not your creditors rise up suddenly and those who collect from you awaken? Indeed, you will become plunder for them because you have looted many nations. All the remainder of the peoples will loot you. So he says the Chaldeans also will be judged, but later. So that's what he says is going to happen. You're right, Habakkuk. They are a wicked people. I'm going to use them to judge you, and I'm going to use all the nations to judge them. And Habakkuk responds and says, I heard and my inward parts trembled. At the sound, my lips quivered. Decay enters my bones, in my place I tremble, because I must wait quietly for the day of distress, for the people to arise who will invade us. He says, I hear you, but now it's really uncomfortable and difficult because I'm waiting for the judgment to fall. You've told me the Chaldeans are going to invade, and I know they're coming. But then he says, though the fig tree should not blossom, and there be no fruit on the vines, though the yield of the olive should fail, and the fields produce no food, though the flock should be cut off from the fold, and there be no cattle in the stalls, though everything should go wrong, and though we should face a horrible judgment, yet I will exult in the Lord. I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. I'll still trust you. I'll still look to you. The Lord God is my strength, and he's made my feet like hinds' feet, and made me walk on my high places. Notice that when he says he's made my feet like hinds' feet and made me walk on my high places, he doesn't mean he's going to bless my life in circumstances or the circumstances around me. He doesn't mean I'm going to be spared the disaster of the Chaldeans coming and judging the wickedness of our nation. He means that even in that, I can still trust God. I can still live by faith. So he's rising to the challenge that God gave him. Though it tarry, wait for it. The righteous will live by faith. So God and Habakkuk have had this interesting dialogue. And the whole book of Habakkuk, these prophecies are prophecies that are partly prophecies, but partly Habakkuk praying with God and having a conversation with him. God, why is there so much injustice? God says, I'll judge it through the Chaldeans. And he says, wait, God, that's even worse. Why they're even worse? And God says, I will eventually judge them, but it'll be a while. And Habakkuk says, then as hard as this is for me, I'm going to trust you. So I want you to see this is in a way similar to what happened with Abraham. God is inviting Habakkuk into a conversation with him in prayer. And so one of the lessons we learn from this, sometimes praying means wrestling through our questions with God. Sometimes being a prophet, hearing from God in whatever way he speaks to us, will mean wrestling through our questions with God. Sometimes God doesn't just say, here's the answer. He invites us to ask. He invites us to question, to say, I don't understand, God. I don't see how I can handle this. I don't see how this answer will work for me. And he tells us. But again, he often answers this in ways that are outside of our expectations. He didn't answer Habakkuk in the way Habakkuk expected. He brought the Chaldeans, which is not what Habakkuk expected. And then he said the Chaldeans will be judged themselves, but it'll be a while. And so sometimes the answers we don't necessarily like, but we ask and we need to listen. And he has help for Habakkuk. He gives him the spiritual strength to handle this. And so we may have to be willing sometimes to just rest in him. We may ask questions and we may not like the answers. But Habakkuk was willing to say, though all these things go wrong, yet I will rejoice in the God of my salvation. He's made my feet like hinds' feet. He found that God was sufficient and was enough. And sometimes that's the answer God will give us, is my strength is made perfect in weakness. You can find grace in this situation. I love the verse in Psalm 131, where the psalmist says simply this, Lord, my heart is not proud, nor my eyes haughty, nor do I involve myself in great matters or in things too difficult for me. Surely I have composed and quieted my soul. Like a weaned child rests against his mother, my soul is like a weaned child within me. O Israel, hope in the Lord, from this time forth and forever. We are invited to ask questions, but there are times when we have to let go of wrestling with things that are above our pay grade. And we have to be willing to say, God, I do trust you. I do ask you for answers, but I will trust whatever you tell me. I will not try to go after matters too difficult for me. I'm going to compose and quiet myself. An unweaned child struggles and cries to get milk, but a weaned child rests against its mother and trusts that she is there and that that's enough. And so that's sometimes what we have to do. Notice again that his goal is to deepen our relationship with him by growing our faith in him. When we ask questions of God and really listen to the answers and let him stretch us and challenge us, it's because he wants to deepen our relationship with him and grow our faith in him. Okay, see you next time.